More people saved, but it's not simply a structural challenge. There are cultural issues of how we treat people, the message we give to people, and how we make our people feel in the sense of how we've got to grow, and we've got to do a deeper job looking at those things, not just structure. And I guess the last thing I'll say is that you probably have no idea what everybody's tribe is saying, and I hope I haven't confused you all the more. Okay, thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Our tribe is the Kessler Group, otherwise known as the Love Tribe. Really great to have. We don't have a photo, but we did have some pretty amazing people in our group. Derek Vett, Tom McCurry, Vivian Haynes, A.T. and Marcy Arneson, Ron and Linda Brumley, and our chief tribal leader, Ed Anton. I am bragging a little bit, yes. So we started off very interesting. Really appreciate Ed and how he led our exercises. We had a couple of exercises really to get our juices flowing and to have divergent thinking among us. And so cool. We had and so but, which we really enjoyed building on each other's ideas and our dreams without closing each other off, but building on and really lifting each other up in our thoughts and our perspectives. The other exercise we had was, if there was a book that had to be written about us in 50 years, what would the title of that book be? We had some pretty interesting things. The radical edge of restoration history. Jesus, the ideal servant leader as seen through the ICOC. Written on human hearts, people of the ICOC. Experience Jesus, people of the ICOC. Are you following our theme? Come on. Really cool. Here is a, let me advance, sorry. Okay, we get to some of our survey statistics. Very cool. I think we get top points for on the topic of global movement, 100% unanimous across the board. Organized globally, yes, we had 89% as an affirmative yes and 11% no. A mandate and a vision, whether we need that, 67% yes, and 33 abstain. And really, like was said before, we really just, with some qualifications and some clarifications on what that would be. It was not a definitive no, but just we had more questions. Upgrade communications, 100%. We're all in agreement of that. Global missions organizations, 67% in the affirmative and 33% abstain. Conflict resolution structure, 33% yes and 67% no. But we really needed more information about that, what that would look like, how that would benefit us internationally, the large churches as well as the small churches around the world. A global management of resources, 44% of the group affirmed, 33 no, and 22 abstained. And I really appreciate that we had some really honest discussions. And really what preceded our survey voting was our vision statement. And I appreciate again that we were able to go in the direction of talking about a great commission, a compassionate commission. Also, we looked at being kingdom-minded. We also talked about a radical edge of restoration. God's being God-relevant and Spirit-led. Known by our love, and hence our love tribe. Being in every town and every village. Humble lives, giving and serving all. And hey, the audacity of being authentic. And we really capitalized on those combined as our vision statement. We couldn't come up with one, but we were dreaming, and we had so many thoughts on that. And finally, resolute in Jesus. And Jesus. I mean, really, it's what we all agree on. This is the one thing that we can agree on through everybody's dreaming. We thought transcends every culture, every language, every country. Jesus is what it all comes back to. And it's always going to be about Jesus. And as we talked about that, Jesus in all of us, Jesus through us, Jesus to all. We talked about we reflect Jesus in our lives, showing his our countercultural bent, and emphasizing the kingdom view of life. Be sure to highlight his full ministry. Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. That is where we ended.
I just felt compelled to come up. Guardians of the Galaxy, we are nimbly led by the Tollivers and grateful for our opportunity to communicate. One of the nice things about going later in the process is that you don't have to restate everything, so I'll just add in some holes here. This is us, that's our picture, and that's what I don't know what your group is like, but should it be a global movement? Yes, the only thing we would add is that this vision needs to be recast, recommunicated, not assumed, but to not repackaged, but to be reinstilled in our thinking and our thoughts. Do we need to be globally organized? Yes. In the inimitable words of Steve Kennard, it's much better than being disorganized globally. So, we would prefer to be organized globally. Oh. So we do have a functioning structure with our delegates, et cetera, and but we do need to add even more construct to that. But one of the brothers mentioned, really the issue isn't so much our structure, but it's being re-anchored in trust. That there's a trust between leadership and laity, and rebuilding the trust with one another where it needs to be. So that's our, there we go. Do we need a vision mission statement? Yes, we felt the mission statement in our past was not our problem. It was how that was implemented. And so a vision statement, mission statement, absolutely, but that wasn't really our issue. It was how do we do this? And in going forward, a mission statement, a vision statement, recognizing there's external and internal ones, need to be more implemented in a more relevant and timely fashion. So that was our issue with that. Mission statement, suggestion. That is our look of our crowd there. Really? A vision statement of importance and what it would need to capture would take more than we had time to grasp. So we thought that it's important, warrants careful and prayerful consideration. That's our way of saying that's why we didn't think of one at the moment, because it takes more prayerful and watchful consideration. So that's right. Do we need to significantly upgrade our global communication infrastructure? Yes. We have one, but we want to talk a little more clearly around that issue. Sharing, what should we do? Sharing good news. Good news is powerful, and we have tools and skills to do so. ICOC Hot News is an incredible tool. We're going to be talking about movie seeing later tonight, but they need more money, more opportunities, more access. We don't need, when we talk about better translation, quicker translation, quality, the affirming answer is absolutely yes. But we cannot have the spirit of they need to go fix it. We have got to be involved in giving our heart and our resources behind giving ICOC Hot News DT the resources and the tools to do the things that we need to do. Increase our collective Bible knowledge as a group. We're not as gifted or skilled across our whole fellowship as we once were. I feel like that's a key area of improvement for us. Managing our ICOC reputation online is a key source and of importance for us. So these are areas, these are suggestions of improving our elements of communication. And then Thank you. We are grateful to be a part of this group. And we are grateful to be a part of this fellowship. And we are very... Oh, and someone getting a phone call? You can go ahead and answer that because I'm in transition. So we are the Bantu tribe. A Bantu describes a collection of people that are united by a common root language. No wonder people have a hard time with this. Is it left?
Push the right. The other one. And you don't...
Yeah! It didn't make it from PowerPoint and Keynote. But anyway, so it's a collection of people united by a common root language, tribes within Africa, and we, in the same way, are united by a common language. They said make an angry face. I thought Mallory, he thought Mickey Mouse. I don't know what happened there. But as we talked together and united on this common language and as a common purpose, we came up with all of the answers to all of the questions.
Walter did a masterful job just guiding us, and we're really thankful to be a part of this group. But what we started with was just sharing, when did we catch the vision? And in 1997, I went to the first ICMC in Paris, and really a lot of my fears were alleviated seeing the global vision for what our church and what we as young people could do. People shared about the ILC in Johannesburg in 1995. People shared about Crossroads Vision. It was local, but going to the Boston Mission seminars gave them a global vision. So absolutely, we believe in a global movement.
So do we need to be organized globally? Absolutely. Because without organization, we become like a small, not well-known Bantu tribe comprised of 4 people.
So we have some friends. They're in the Bantu tribe named Everybody, Somebody, Anybody, and Nobody. There was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody, but when nobody did what anybody could do.
Without a structure, we ensure that nobody will be the one stuck paying the bill and doing the work. There is a global food crisis and starvation, not because we don't have the resources, but we have an inability to distribute food where it needs to go. We need a global organization because we need to meet the need with the resources. And to do so, we must be organized, there must be a structure, and somebody must be responsible. So yes, we absolutely need it. The devil's in the details. Do we need a vision statement? Oh, we'll cover the next one. Do we need a vision statement? Absolutely, we need a vision statement. Why? Because a vision statement takes a global vision and makes it personal for every disciple. What do we think? Well, there's a lot of things out there, a lot of churches doing different things. What do? We make disciples, making disciples of all nations through all generations. It's a working thing, Wade. Okay, work with us. Do we need to significantly upgrade our global communication infrastructure? Absolutely. There's missing pieces. Done. Our mission societies. As we organize, what are the concerns? We have mission societies. We don't need to tear those down to start over. But our mission society, our organizational structure must be based in relationship.
And I think that's really the key is our relationships where trust has been rebuilt. And we talked a lot about structure and global movement, but what was emphasized was just the relationships and trust. Is it being built? Can we go beyond our historical relationships to include more people, diverse countries, but also age groups? And that was really important. More contact between people, face-to-face communication beyond just sending funds.
One brother out of the Mexican churches said that as he comes to these things and he watches the global structure being built, sometimes it feels like I'm watching a movie of something amazing happening, but I'm just not a part of it. As we move towards global organization and structure, we need to include all, make sure that we're relationship based, and time is up. Good luck with the rest. Thank you.
We have bonus minutes for that last group. Let's really thank the tribal reps. Great job.
Like out of sight, out of mind. And it's easy for me to be looking out in that sense, masked with an air of spirituality, but really to be looking out for my own interests. I think I understand that better. And the thing I got convicted by, and that what I want to encourage all of us with is, let's really wrestle with having this pure heart of Timothy, and who is himself imitating the heart of Christ that's talked about earlier on in that passage. And so, amen. If we could do that, that would mean a lot to me. And amen. Let's move forward. So recapping. We talked about this yesterday, but briefly. Where have we come from? Well, in a nutshell, before 2003, at least since about whatever it was, 1987, when world sector leaders were formed, we had a hierarchy that had world sector leaders and geographical sector leaders and so on and so forth. And then after the firestorm of 2003, I think we quickly unraveled, became very mutually suspicious, and that's how I would describe it. Basically, we wanted autonomy more than anything else, and indeed that's how we lived. Then there was formed by many of you with great wisdom. While I was out in India trying to sort myself out, many of you stood in the gap, and I'm so grateful for that. And came up with, I believe through the wisdom of God working through you, came up with the delegates system and the service teams, which have served us well in many ways, and I'm going to talk about that. And then kind of side by side with that, regions of churches started to work together, and there developed the regional families, which each had core groups, and sort of chairing those core groups, there was a couple there is a couple that chairs those core groups of leaders, and I think we have 31 of those now. And that's right, 33, is that right? Okay, 33, David's telling me. And but at the same time, right now, we have no global leadership. We've never dared to, we've talked about, but we've never taken any positive steps or talked about taking some concrete steps till this time here together about do we need, and that's, frankly, that's what I want to propose, that we do need a global leadership. Okay, and that's what I want to talk about for a little bit and hopefully make a bit of a case for. Where do we stand? Okay, it's obvious that in the old school hierarchy that we had, nobody's got any appetite for that. I think in all of our discussions across the spectrum of opinion, it's fair to say nobody wants another group of world sector leaders led by one individual in the way that we experienced pre-2003. Nobody has any appetite for that. But the question is the time ripe? Is there a case for saying we need some kind of global leadership? I found it probably on Facebook, first of all, but never be defined by your past. It was just a lesson. Yeah. It wasn't meant to be a life sentence. Amen. And, God wants us to learn the lessons of his discipline, but not to be shackled by that and so hamstrung that we can't move forward. Come on. Where do we stand? Why should we be concerned? It's been encouraging to hear about the churches that have grown over the past several years, not as a one-year wonder,
but over a period of several years. It's been encouraging to see that. I take heart, and whenever we get together, I try to learn from the success stories and the good examples in our global brotherhood. It's been said frequently we've had less than 2% growth per year over the last several years. I think I'm right in saying that not in one of those years have we gone over 2%. Have we ever? We have, okay. The average is actually 2, okay, that's actually, it's in the booklet, which I haven't read that part, obviously, okay. Amen. Last year, last year it was 1.2, okay, and the year before that I think it was below 2%. Okay, the last 2 years certainly, and last year quite a bit below. But regardless of that, I think that's deceptive, because I think there's a large number of churches that have grown much less than that, and I understand that in any given year in the last few years, about a third of our churches have actually shrunk. And I don't remember, but I've heard said the astounding number of churches. I heard last year, I heard this year, but the astounding number of churches that had 0 baptisms in the previous year. And, you know, why is this important? You know, maybe you're tempted to think, why this fixation with the numbers? Why aren't we more concerned about the depth? And I think we're concerned about both. Yeah. Actually, our favorite rallying cry in our tribe yesterday was build his church. With the reasoning that we're trying to multiply disciples, but we're trying to have depth as well as an expansion of numbers. Yeah. And so we want to build, not just baptize. We want to build, and we want to build his church, remembering that we're just stewards. Right. But both of those are important. But I think the thing that concerns me is this, that sometimes we ignore that slow growth is not just about a statistic that we're not happy about. Beneath that lies unaddressed issues. You know, what a lack of discipleship and a lack of a call to a discipleship sometimes. Sin that is not addressed. Marriages that are hurting. People that are crying out for help. And even in London, I'm so thrilled to see what God has done. From when we landed there several years ago, we were 9 churches in one city, with the same mutual suspicion inside one city that we were having globally. And but to see what God has done in bringing us together, not without risks, not without mistakes made, not without losing some people, not without criticism, some of it justified, but to see what God has done is wonderful. And there is in the London leadership team, I believe, a oneness of heart and mind that is greater than it's been for many years. But even with that, even with all of us pulling in one direction, I'm always surprised by how we keep uncovering layers of needs, of you know, discipleship needs, and weakness. And so I can't even imagine, what is it like in a church that has stagnated or not grown for many, many years? And you know, if you're fortunate enough to belong to a region where these things, you know, a region of churches where these things get addressed, amen, you're blessed. But I do think we have many churches where they don't have the strength to address them, and they don't have the surrounding environment of churches and leaders to help them. One of the questions we need to ask ourselves is there enough of a pattern that we think this is a problem to be concerned about? Are there some problems that are global? And, you know, because when I got feedback about this presentation, some of the brothers said, well, isn't this aren't these really things that we need to address regionally? And yeah, ultimately, you know, we have to address them regionally and even locally. But are some of the challenges that we face global enough that we think we need a global leadership as part of the package to deal with them? Hand in hand with that, does someone need to call us to action? I mean, certainly on a local scale in London, the problem was, you know, we did something similar in London. We went around the different regions and basically had workshops with the, you know, just a couple of hours with the leadership teams, and then with the with the disciples and talked about how they felt things were going, what was broken, what needed improvement, what needed fixing. And as we talked, it became apparent that we were not gonna meet these needs unless we threw our money in together, had a common staff, and had some people with the authority to call everybody else to action, with the trust to call everybody to action. So a question to ask ourselves is, on a worldwide scale, does someone need to call us to action? The question that's asked sometimes is, aren't these merely local or regional issues? I think that's what we're talking about. Do we have enough of a consensus in this room that we think, no, they are regional and local, but they're not merely regional and local. There's a component of repenting and moving forward that needs to be addressed globally. Do we agree with that? Next, does our present structure help? We have a system of delegates with service teams. These were born out of a specific need post-2003, and that need was to move forward cautiously because the sensitivities were so strong and mistrust was so rife. And brave individuals led the way in helping us to reconnect at a time that was very precarious. That's what it was born out of. So many good things have come out of the delegates and the service teams. The fellowship that we've had, starting with the early conferences and then moving on, each one has become better. The mission societies, a kingdom MTA curriculum, and many other things came out of the delegates and the service team system. And evidently, God has been working. These are tremendous things that I'm personally grateful for. But by design, the system is suggestive and it's minimal in its mutual impact. The best that we can come up with when we talk to each other is, well, here are some suggestions, here are some proposals, but there's no real call to action. There's no sense in which, there's not much of a sense in which we disciple each other when we come to these meetings and call each other to some expectations. In contrast, we don't work that way in our regional families of churches. In Ephesians 4, a passage that's well known to us, but if we could look at it for a minute. In Ephesians 4, and verse 1, as a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the calling you have received. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit through the bond of peace. There is one body and one Spirit, just as you were called to one hope when you were called. One Lord, one faith, one baptism, one God and Father of all, who is over all and through all and in all. But to each one of us grace has been given as Christ apportioned it. This is why it says, when he ascended on high, he took many captives and gave gifts to his people. What does it mean that he ascended, except that he also descended to the lower earthly regions? He who descended is the very one who ascended higher than all the heavens, in order to fill the whole universe. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. If I thought about what happens in a London church leaders meeting, or what happens in a staff retreat in the UK, Ireland, and Nordics region, or what happens at a teen camp or a campus retreat, I think I could say confidently that this passage describes what happens. There's a striving for unity. There's a goal of calling each other to the character of Christ together. There are groups in which we not only hear lessons, but we process it in groups, and we get open and real and talk to each other about our lives. There's prayer together. There's an equipping of the saints for works of service. Before I started attending these meetings, my supposition was, okay, so it's like that in our local leaders meeting. It's like that in a church-wide leaders meeting. It's like that when the regional family of leaders gets together. So I thought maybe when we all get together, this is kind of like the greatest staff retreat on earth. And another passage that I think all of those regional meetings could be described by is the idea of prayer and the ministry of the word, which in Acts 6 the apostles felt they needed to devote themselves to. And by contrast, now, there's some of that goes on, but to a large extent, it kind of depends on you taking initiative to go and get time with people and have those kind of conversations. We have words that describe caution to me. What is a delegate? My dad built a career in the United Nations. The United Nations has delegates. A delegate is a person with diplomatic immunity. There's only so much you can say to them, There's not really any sense of accountability, But we use that word to describe what we do. So I'm not saying we're exactly like that, but there's an element of that that I see that I think it's time to move beyond, in my view. And I know I'm only, one on an opinion spectrum, but that's my view. So a question, what should happen? One thing to talk about this afternoon is, do we agree with these ideas? But also, what should happen to the existing structure? Should we continue with service teams? Should we continue with the delegate system? And then, underneath that, have they served? They did have a purpose which they served very well post-2003. A lot of great things were accomplished through them. But have they served that purpose? What significant decisions have we made? I mean, if I think about the delegates, I was a delegate until about 2 years ago, and then I kept attending the meetings as the chairman of the UK and Ireland and Nordic churches. I think about the most significant decision we've made was to all agree to have a kingdom events entity. And that was somewhat significant because there was money involved. Other than that, a lot of the decisions that we've made have been, just affirming that the one candidate who was going to replace the previous chairman of a service team or a committee should then be the new chairman of that committee. Whoa. That's about it. Now, in recognition of that, a few years ago, I think there was I think starting in Brooklyn maybe, there was a conscious decision. Let's turn the delegates meeting into a church builders workshop. And that was awesome. Yeah. But I feel, looking back since that time, I feel like it's been difficult to gain traction with that. And because of the suggestive nature of the word delegate and kind of the way we're constituted. So, do we need a different type of global leadership meeting? Something that is more akin to a staff retreat that we would have in one of our regional families. Do we need that, is a question. How can we address this? My